Welcome to Everyday Moodlings. I'm your host, Jeree Parks, and in this episode we are going to talk about paint and ways to apply paint without using a paintbrush. So if you've watched me for a while, then you know I have an aversion to cleaning paint off of things, particularly stencils. Hate it. Yet I hate just leaving the paint on my stencil. Pretty much I'm just screwed there. So I kind of stopped using paint with my stencils, my plastic stencils, and I did a whole series of things on paper stencils and using those instead, which has worked great for me. But I also hate cleaning out paintbrushes. In fact, I'm incredibly abusive to the paintbrushes I use with acrylic paints or acrylic mediums, so I tend to get like the cheapest ones out there and just toss them when they're no longer usable. I'm far better with my watercolor brushes, but paintbrushes I just get cheapo ones in the craft section, and when they're toast, and out they go. So but there are some really fun ways to apply paint without even using a paintbrush. And we're not necessarily going to talk about applicators today. There are some fun applicators out there. Like these. This is from a company called Artsy. These are fun applicators too, but you do have to clean these, although they are easier to clean than paintbrushes. So I'm going way out of that realm. We are going to use things that you probably won't have to clean or will be very easy to clean. So what are those? And then we're going to play with paint today, so I'm going to talk about what paint we're going to use. So we are going to be using, to apply paint, an old gift card, credit card, hotel key card. My husband travels a lot, so these are in great supply in our house. So always easy to find those. We're going to use these ink blending tools by Ranger. You may have seen Diane, the lady who creates Dilutions, use them with her paint. It's super easy to do. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then my favorite, baby wipes. The baby wipe has become an essential tool in my studio. Like, I just don't think I could do an entire any project without them. So we are also going to use them as a paint applicator. The wonderful thing about using some of the things that we're going to do in this video is that they create a much lighter layer of paint than a paintbrush, and that is often desirable when you are putting layer upon layer upon layer onto, let's say, an art journal page, and maybe you want to limit your bulk. So that's a great way to do that. So this is just a Dilutions small journal. I talked about it several weeks ago that I had finally come over to the dark side and started art journaling. I knew once I started it would become just an addiction, and it has done it. Yeah, totally. I'm there. And I actually really like this small one. As you know, I like to work small. I'm tag art, I'm ATC, I do small canvases. Sometimes I'll do a larger piece, but I'm often working small, so this works really well for that. This particular art journal has a purpose. Not yet going to share that with you, but in future videos and projects you'll get to see exactly what the purpose of this art journal is. And my whole process here is I just often open up a page and do some fun background, and that, building upon that, eventually becomes my page. So there's no rhyme or reason to where I open it up. I just kind of throw things in, and then as I get to the point where I'm ready to finish the page, I do that. But I enjoy starting my morning off working on a particular just playing. So I'm not working on a project, I'm just playing, and then, you know, eventually that background turns into something more. So this is the first page, and I just am noting this one real quick. This will be my completed project for this week. You'll see this later in the week, but this background, I used a couple of things we're going to talk about in this video on this art journal page. One, the background itself, I applied using a baby wipe, and it was this beautiful color from Dilutions Paint. And then I also used my card, my plastic card, to create the lines as well. So a couple of pieces there. But they'll be finished, there'll be all the photos for this one later in the week when I post my project from this video. So like I said, we're going to focus on 3 different techniques: baby wipes, ink blender tool applicators, and our plastic key card. And so I also have 3 different types of paint that I'm working with. We're going to work with the Dilutions paint, which is, I love her colors. I love that it's a flat paint. I am not a huge fan of Ranger paint, mostly because it's not very shelf stable. So if you buy it, don't let it sit for a year. You're probably not going to like the outcome of that. In fact, I've already had to replace some of my Dilutions paint because they get clumpy and thick, and the only ones that aren't like that are the distressed. They tend to stay pretty stable, so not always but I love the colors, so I will continue to buy her paints. We're also going to use another type of flat paint, which this one's made by Americana. It's a chalky finish. I actually really love this paint. Doesn't come in very many colors, but it's awesome. And then we're also going to use just some basic craft paint. So you know, when you compare these two, this one has gone bad on me within a year. I think I could leave these bottles in my stash for 10 years and they would still be just fine. So don't always have to spend extra, just have to know what it is that you're getting. So okay, so I have 3 that I've kind of pulled out, and they're just random, like I'm not going in order, just wherever I want it to go. And then you know, as I come in the studio in the morning, then I'll play with them more and eventually work them into a art completed page. So on this one, I've already started the background because I wanted something behind the paint itself. And these are just scribbled circles, and I get started. I have this whole set here of all of my punches. This helps me decide what punch size I need, but they are also a great stencil. So I just start out with making one quick go around with the Sharpie and then scribble some more afterwards. And then I did a little stamping in my circles. So in this one, we're actually going to start with our credit card. And we're going to use the craft paint for this one. And I'm going to shake it up a little bit, and then we're just going to put a few drops on the top. Okay, so I opted actually to put them in the center because I know it's going to be a little heavier wherever those dots are at. So I'd rather do that than have all the heaviness at the top. So we'll push it back and forth. The great thing about using craft paint for this particular project is because it's a lot more fluid than, say, your artist grade paints, and that's just because basically it's watered down, which is kind of what I'm looking for here. You can also use fluid paints, but this will work just fine for our project. And we're just going to take our credit card and we're just going to put our paint on there. You'll also notice I'm not particularly great about protecting my pages all that much. I'm just not all that worried about it, but I am gonna go ahead and throw in paper towel here so that I can get off to this edge. my key card still has paint on there, so I can come back here. And just fill out the edge there. Now I want to make sure, now we've got it all applied, but you can come back here and kind of scrape some of that back off if you feel like it's obscured your image in the back. So I didn't want to completely obscure my circles, and I did a good job of making sure that you can still see some of them. I just slightly wanted to obscure them. And I'm just going back with the baby wipe to kind of fill in any gaps so that you don't see that ivory background. So that's how you apply it with a plastic key card or credit card. It's really simple and easy to clean up. Obviously, my favorite, baby wipes. So we clean that up, and now of course we're going to let that dry. And you can hurry this up with the heat gun. Where this goes from here, not really sure at this point. It's just a background. I sense I'm going to end up putting some white on top of it to lighten it up a little bit, but we'll see where it goes. Okay, so dried the other background, which is just right here. And now we're going to do our second background. We're going to use baby wipes for this one. And I'm using this Art Deco chalky finish paint. Make sure you shake it up quick, really well, because it does separate a little bit. Now when you're using two colors like this, it's really best to go ahead and do the entire background in one color. You're just going to take your baby wipe, pick up some color, and start to move it around. Now you do want to be kind of gentle here, as if you start to put too much pressure on the paper, it will start to degrade the paper, and you'll have some tearing or peeling of the paper. As you can see, you can get a real nice coat there. Okay, so quick tip here, you want to make sure that you put enough paint on the baby wipe to begin with. Otherwise, you're really going to have to put too much pressure to get it to move around, so make sure you have ample paint there. And second of all, how you move it around, how you spread it around on the page will affect how the background looks. So you can go back, so I try to keep it like this. You'll see I kind of move circular there, and that's okay too. You can also go back and do, after you've kind of covered the page, you can go back in and do a little dry brushing. You could do some pouncing, but I've kind of protected it now that I've got one coat down, so that leaves me some more options there. But we're going to go back and add in some blue as well. On top of it. And this is kind of like when you do a double blending of ink. I don't want to cover up all of the green. Obviously, that's not really what I'm going for. But just trying to create kind of a multi-layered look. Of course, at this point, I have no idea what this will eventually turn into. Now, at this point, I'm going to let it dry just a little bit before we go on to the next step here. because what you have right now is kind of this really structured look, like really hard edges, and I'm going to show you a quick way to kind of soften those a little bit, but I'm going to dry it real quick with a little heat gun action. Okay, so one of the original things I didn't like about just my quick background there is that there's a really hard transition from one color to another. Now there are two ways to kind of deal with that. One, as you're putting it down, you can kind of use your fingers to blend the edges a little bit better. One of my favorite ways is to pull some of the colors together using a stencil, where I'll use, in this case, the blue on top of that green, and then we're going to go ahead and go back and add some of the green on top of the blue. To me, that kind of blends all the colors together really well. I'm actually using a stencil from Faber-Castell. I do make my own paper stencils too with the Cricut, but these are a great addition. Now be careful if you're doing this with a baby wipe, because it's paper and you don't want to get it too wet. Start to degrade my stencil. Now the green is really pretty light on top of that blue. It's pretty subtle, but I can see that my green and blue have really combined nicely in my edging, so I can go back now as I layered them together and go back and also add in some of this blue on top of the blue area. Now that is one way to kind of get your colors all to come together and lose some of those hard edges. Like I said, you can also come in here with just your finger and soften those edges if you want to as well. Okay, so that's how you use baby wipes to apply paint to your projects. It's actually one of my favorite ways to add paint to my projects, mostly because, you know, I can just throw them away afterwards. There's no cleaning at all. So let me clean up here real quick, and then we'll take a look at using ink blending tools to apply paint. Okay, I wanted to show you what I mean by Ranger paint. I just was prepping for setting up this last one, and look at this particular paint. It is now solid and rubbery and pretty useless to me. So this, I'll show you how they're supposed to look. See how fluid that is and shiny? It's really pretty. But it doesn't take long, and they're going to start to get thicker and thicker and thicker. And I keep my lids on tight. There's nothing I can do with this. Yeah, I can't add water to it. It's like a sponge to reconstitute it. So that's going out in the garbage. So I don't purchase a whole lot of their paints for that reason. So I pulled out the purple, turquoise, and green, and that's what we're going to go with. Now I'm going to do kind of a color blocking here, which is what she often does, and I think it looks awesome. This one's gotten pretty thick on me, but I can still go ahead and water it down a little bit on my craft mat. To get started, you want to go ahead and do the entire background in one color, just like we did previously. So, and that should always be your lightest color. So I'm going to put a little on my craft mat, and yeah, this one's getting really thick on me too. It's probably going to go out soon. Which is disappointing. I don't like to spend money on products that I have to throw away before I use them all. Okay, so we did get the green done. Now, you do not need to clean these out. They might get a little stiff as they dry, but typically you can just go right back to using them again. my blues a little bit better. So we're going to kind of do just a color blocking. Pattern here. Just really fun to do. Okay, so now she recommends going back with a second coat over the top. I don't really feel the need to do that all that often. I kind of like the less than perfect look. But you are certainly welcome to go back. Now, this needs to dry, and then I'm going to go ahead and do like I did before, take a stencil, put it over the top, and kind of pull things together a little bit, but I need this to dry before I start with the next step. You can go ahead and use the blending tool on the stencil as well. It works really, really well with that. So I'm going to go ahead and quick dry this with my heat gun before I do that step, and I'll be back at the end to show it to you. Okay, so I finished that application of paint up, and basically I just went back with this paper stencil and added in some of those other colors. It kind of pulls it all together a little bit, makes it feel less like just color blocking. So I pulled out a different color of Dylusions green to go over the top of that yellowish green. But I think the yellowish green paint is done as well, as it has gotten thick and clumpy. So I may be looking to find, you know, Americana paint that matches hers. But one of the things I love about hers is that it's flat, and that's, you know, a really nice look to work with. So those are 3 different ways to use paint without using a paintbrush. There are plenty of other applicators you could use out there. These are 3 of my favorites. So we used the ink blending tool by Ranger, which is an awesome option for applying paint, particularly through stencils. Works really well through stencils. And then we did the baby wipes. They don't look like much now, but remember, this journal page started out with a baby wipe background. So it's just an initial covering to get rid of that ivory color. So who knows where it goes from here. And then this was our paint scraping with the plastic credit card. So if you are averse to cleaning paintbrushes as I am, fear not. There are ways to apply your paint without ever touching a paintbrush, which is pretty darn awesome in my world. So you can go to the blog. If you're on YouTube, you can go to my blog, Everyday Moodlings, and see my completed project for this week. Or you can, if you're on the blog, obviously there'll be links for it later this week. And if you have any questions about anything I did here, please be sure to let me know. I'm always happy to help.